My name is Natalia Bennett. I'm 38. At 2:17 on a freezing Thursday morning, my younger sister stood in my entryway holding the keys to my SUV and asked me to confess to a crime she had committed. One headlight was shattered, the bumper scraped, a thin red mark across the hood. He came out of nowhere, she whispered. Then she admitted she'd driven away. Before I could respond, my mother grabbed my shoulders and said, "Just tell the police you were driving." My father arrived seconds later, calm as always. "Your sister has a campaign. You have nothing to lose." They still believed I was the family dropout, the disappointment who vanished into government work. They had no idea that 3 weeks earlier, inside a federal courthouse, I'd taken an oath to administer justice without fear or favoritism. My sister looked at my modest apartment, my old sweatshirt, and smiled. "Who would believe you anyway?" She had no idea my SUV had already recorded everything, the collision, the conversation inside the vehicle, the route she took after leaving a man bleeding in the street. My sister, Caroline, was 33, running for Denver City Council on a platform of accountability and safer streets. Our parents had built their whole identity around her. Mom chaired charity boards. Dad had spent 25 years as a political fixer who believed any crisis could be controlled with the right story. To them, I was the warning, Caroline was the future. They told people I'd dropped out of law school. In truth, I'd transferred, graduated, clerked for a federal judge, prosecuted corruption cases, and none of them had ever bothered to ask. Caroline had borrowed my SUV, claiming a photographer was following her. At 2:17 a.m. she showed up smelling of wine, telling me a story that kept shifting. A man stepped into the road, the pavement was icy, she slowed down, she saw him move, but she never stopped, never called 911. My father immediately started building a cover story. I would say I was driving, they'd call it an accident from poor visibility. My mother's only real concern was the neighbors overhearing. Then my phone buzzed, a courthouse security alert. My SUV had cameras installed after threats tied to a federal case. Caroline knew nothing about them. While my family debated which lie sounded more believable, I quietly messaged the judicial security officer to preserve all footage. They kept rewriting the timeline, deciding I should say I thought I'd hit a trash can. Caroline let slip that someone named Evan had been in the car with her. She'd claimed she was alone. Minutes later my mother got a call. A doorbell camera had caught part of the crash, and the SUV in it looked like mine. Caroline panicked and turned on me, accusing me of being the one who'd been driving. At 4:28 a.m., Caroline's campaign manager, Evan Cross, arrived, visibly injured, admitting he'd been in the passenger seat, that Caroline had been drinking, and that he'd urged her to stop. My father tried to shut him down, calling it not an interview. Caroline, cornered, threw her real weapon at me, an old secret. Years ago I'd covered for her after she damaged an apartment during a party, letting my name go on the paperwork to protect her from Dad. "You covered for me once. You can do it again," she said. I told her that was property damage, no one was hurt. This was different. Caroline decided the family's leverage was simple: no husband, no kids, no public profile, no one who'd believe me over all of them combined. So I opened my office door and showed them who I actually was. My judicial robe. My commission. A photo of me taking the oath beside the chief judge. A plaque, "The Honorable Natalia E. Bennett, United States Magistrate Judge." Silence. They hadn't known. I'd told them about my confirmation, they'd been too busy with Caroline's campaign to listen. My father tried to spin it as an asset, use your credibility. I told him I wanted my family protected from consequences, not protected in them. Then I opened the security app and showed them exactly what had been recorded: exterior video, interior audio, GPS, braking data, images from both front seats, all locked on a federal server. The room went cold. By morning, the injured man was identified: Samuel Ortiz, 61, a maintenance worker walking home from his bus route. Fractured leg, broken ribs, a head injury. While his family sat in a hospital, mine was still discussing polling numbers. Caroline hired a defense attorney, Rebecca Shaw, who immediately shut down all family strategizing, warning that their private conversation could itself become evidence of obstruction. Detectives interviewed us separately. I disclosed everything, my identity, what Caroline asked of me, the judicial security contact. Then came the gut punch. Caroline had already called police hours earlier and suggested I might have been the one driving. That afternoon, investigators reviewed the footage. It was worse than anything Caroline admitted. She'd been drinking from a flask while driving, reading campaign texts, struck Samuel Ortiz in a marked crosswalk, and when Evan begged her to stop, she said, "If I stay, the campaign is finished," then drove to a parking garage to inspect the damage instead of calling for help. The recorded call to my father revealed his exact plan. Natalia has no visible career. We can contain the damage around her. Officers seized devices from my parents, Caroline, and Evan. Evan began cooperating immediately. Caroline gave a corrected statement admitting she was driving, fled the scene, and lied, but insisted our father had orchestrated the plan to blame me. Samuel woke up that afternoon and remembered the vehicle leaving. Caroline suspended her campaign as reporters gathered outside my parents' house. My father called donors. My mother deleted charity photos. Neither mentioned Samuel's name. When I confronted them, my father finally slipped. "You could have destroyed the recording." I told him that was the whole point. I hadn't. Loyalty, I said, isn't protecting people from consequences. It's not turning them into someone else's evidence. Caroline withdrew from the race the next morning. Prosecutors charged her with leaving the scene, reckless driving, and false statements. Her donors fled, her party abandoned her. Evan took a cooperation deal. My father became the subject of his own investigation for coordinating false statements. Former clients and his professional association cut ties. My mother resigned from her charity boards after journalists connected her to the cover-up attempt, and even then, she told relatives I had betrayed the family by letting the footage become public, never that Caroline had hit a man and left him in the road. I sent Samuel's family a private letter of regret, asking nothing in return. His daughter later thanked the witnesses and investigators, not me, and I was glad. This was never supposed to be my story. The courthouse conducted a full ethics review and cleared me, though I was reminded that independence has to be visible, not just real. I returned to the bench. 3 months later, Caroline wrote me a letter, explaining the pressure, our father's control, our mother's obsession with image, and finally admitting she'd smiled that night because she wanted me to feel small, and that discovering I was a judge had made her angry, not proud. I read it twice and put it in a drawer. I didn't visit. Forgiveness given too fast becomes another shield. My parents sent messages calling for healing and moving on, without ever apologizing, without an excuse attached. I answered once, I would not participate in healing that required me to forget what happened, and I would consider contact only when each of them took responsibility without blaming fear, politics, or me. 6 months later, Caroline accepted a plea deal. Incarceration, probation, restitution, community service, a long-term driving ban. Her career was over. My father avoided the worst charges but entered his own agreement tied to obstruction. His reputation never recovered. My mother was never charged, but she lost the unquestioned authority she once had. I sold the SUV. I moved my judicial commission from a private office into my entryway, not to impress anyone, but because I'd spent too many years hiding what I'd built to keep other people comfortable. The lesson was simple: blind loyalty isn't love. When a family asks one person to surrender their freedom so another can escape consequences, that isn't unity, it's exploitation wearing the mask of sacrifice. I didn't defeat my sister. The truth did. I just stopped protecting her from it. If you were me, would you protect your sister, protect yourself, or protect the truth? And what price would you be willing to pay?